time. And I hope that you stay alert. I know that sometimes right after lunch, it's very difficult for people to stay alert and pay attention, but I want to believe that it will not be the case in this room, because I'm very certain that this next session promises to be insightful and exciting and would stir our brains and help us think. And so, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished colleagues, dear participants, it is my honor to introduce our facilitator for this session, Honorable Professor Alidu Seidu Mahama. Honorable Professor Alidu Seidu is an accomplished academic, policy researcher, and public servant with extensive experience in governance, democracy, and development across Africa. He serves as an associate professor in the Department of Political Science at the University of Ghana, where he contributes as a research fellow at the Center for Asian Studies. With a strong academic foundation, Professor Alidu holds a PhD from Leeds Metropolitan University in the United Kingdom, a master's degree in development studies from the London School of Economics and Political Science, and a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Ghana. His academic journey reflects a deep commitment to understanding and shaping development and governance processes both in Ghana and globally. Beyond Ghana, Honorable Professor Alidu has built an impressive international profile. He has served as a visiting lecturer across several prestigious universities in Africa, including institutions in Kenya, Tanzania, Nigeria, and Botswana, where he contributes to the training of future leaders in public policy and governance. He is also a former Donahue Institute scholar at the University of Massachusetts, where he deepened his engagement with political thought. His expertise has been sought by numerous respected international and regional organizations. He has worked with institutions such as the United Nations Development Programme, the Institute for Development Studies at the University of Sussex, and Frederick Ebert, okay, I can't pronounce that very well, please forgive me, and the Partnership for African Social and Governance Research, among others. Through these collaborations, he has contributed to critical work on governance, peace building, social protection, and democratic development. Dr. Alidu's research interests are both relevant and impactful. They span areas such as conflict resolution, transitional justice, electoral politics, governance, and social protection policies in Africa. His work consistently bridges academic research and real-world policy application, making his contributions particularly valuable to development practitioners. He is also a widely published scholar, with his work appearing in reputable journals, including Peace Review, Criminal Justice Studies, and the Contemporary Journal of African Development. His research has contributed significantly to discussions on democracy, politics, conflict, and development across the continent. In addition to his academic and research achievements, Honorable Professor Alidu brings practical governance experience to his work, as he currently serves as the Member of Parliament for Tamale Central. This unique combination of academic excellence and political leadership gives him a well-rounded perspective on policy, advocacy, and citizen engagement. Today, we are particularly privileged to have him facilitate this session, as his expertise in governance, rights, and civic engagement strongly aligns with the theme of policy influencing campaign and advocacy strategy, especially for CSOs working to influence policymakers. Ladies and gentlemen, what a distinguished person to come and lead us through this session. With a round of applause, can you help me welcome Honorable Professor Alidu to take this session? You're welcome, sir.
Good afternoon to you all. Thank you so much for the generous introduction. I always enjoyed facilitating sessions at 2 periods, before lunch, where I'm usually the barrier between my participants and lunch, and after lunch, where I usually make it difficult for their food to digest peacefully. So today I'm comfortably put in the second category, where I'll try and see how I'll help your food digest as part of this session. I'm not sure whether the slides are ready. So I've been elected to speak to a very important, critical, interesting topic. and it's about policy influence and then campaign strategy. So largely, yeah. Okay. So I think you can move to the next slide. So largely, I'm going to be very brief, especially given the fact that this is also the last presentation. So I'll be the person who will keep you between sitting here and going home. So I'm just going to be very, very brief, and then we can move on. So my presentation is going to be organized around 5 thematic areas. First of all, I'm going to appreciate and applaud the organizers of this program for selecting me. I think there are more competent, qualified people out there who can do this work better than me. But to single me out to do this is really a great privilege, and I'm really grateful to the organizers of this program. I think we've had a history. I've done a few work for them in the past. So I think this is a little bit of also appreciating me for working with them. And then the second bit, I'm going to look at policy and policy influence. There's a great difference between conceptualization and practice. And I've become a very good example of relating policy to practice. And I always tell people that I meet that if I ever go back to the classroom, I'll teach better than I used to teach. So as a professor of political science in the University of Ghana and former head of department of the political science department at the University of Ghana, I teach a lot of students about policy influence, the role of the legislature, the function of the MP. But when I became MP, I just realized that we're misleading some of them. Because most of the things we used to say are quite different from what we do. And sometimes you go to your constituency, you visit your constituents, and things happen. They're just trying to wrap your head around theory. What theory can explain this behavior? And none comes to mind. You're just wondering. So what is happening? No. So it's something very important to unpack theories and relate them to reality. So what I'll do briefly is to examine what a policy is briefly and the distinction between policy and actually influencing policy. Then I'll look at the policy making processes and then see how those processes can help us identify key areas of interest, but also entry points. Then we now look at strategies that we can adopt to be able to influence policy, then tied with campaign strategy, then I conclude. So if I can move to the next slide. So it's quite simple, but not that straightforward, that the definition of policy, just like many other social science concepts, are quite cumbersome, controversial, and sometimes varied. So your understanding of policy could be the same as another person's understanding of policy, but the realities or the situation or the context within which it is implemented or influenced, so enforced, can create a whole lot of difference. But there have been a general understanding or consensus that policy constitutes a set of ideas, practical search for institutional arrangements for their realization. So it's not just about ideas, but it's about enforcing the ideas that are so conceived, so that the real impact of those ideas are actually what manifested within the people. So definitely, this first definition identifies policy as a set of ideas. So they are conceptualizations. They are usual ideations that we hold, sometimes theories that we hold so dear to ourselves because we believe that it is going to lead to the achievement of certain set of what? Objectives. So they are not just ideas, but more importantly, those ideas require institutions to be enforced. So there's always a medium through which ideas are implemented. And that medium usually can make a whole lot of differences. So if you go back to various instruments or stages of policy making and policy implementation. You tend to see that there's a particular, if you go back to, there's a specific theory I just want to remember. It basically looks at the policy process, PEA, political economy analysis or public policy. It looks at the first box, which talks about policy ideas or country context, policy ideas, and then the blue box or the black box, whichever way you may call it, and then enforcement. And then the blue box is actually the converting build. That's where different shades of policies are fed into the political system. So we have the input, it's fed into the political system, and there are a whole lot of transmissions that occur, and then some of them come out as a specific policy, worthy implementations, and others don't. And we have a whole lot of examples where several bills have been laid before Parliament, and they never came out as policies, or sorry, acts of Parliament, because of the dynamics or the institutional requirement or the institutional impediments or the situational context within which those policies were fed into the political system. And one of them, clearly, is the proper human sexual orientation bill that we've had in Parliament, which died with the 8th Parliament and has been resurrected in the 9th Parliament. And we don't know whether it will stay through the 9th Parliament or it will come back to the 10th Parliament. So largely, policies are not just ideas, but they require institutions and institutional interests to be actualized, and then the impact are felt. So realistically, the establishment of rules required to realize policy objectives are mostly missing in our context, but there are other definitions of policy apart from the one that I've cited. So the other definition by Nelson talks about, looks at policy as a series of documents and decisions that are best described as a set of processes, activities, or actions. Similarly, Anderson looks at policy as a purposive course of action, followed by an actor or set of actors. I usually like Anderson's definition of policy because policy should be intentional. It's not just a chance event. A policy is not a chance event. It is intentional because it is designed or conceptualized to address a specific problem or a specific need or a specific desire in society. So if policies are not intentional, if they are not deliberate, then there is a tendency that it's either going to fail or it's either going to be misdirected, or the intention for which it was formulated may not be achieved. So it is purposive, it is intentional, it is what? A well thought through idea, set of ideas or action. But they are followed by actors or set of actors. There's always a coalition of will. There's always an interest. There's always a power that drives policies so that they actually succeed. And that's one of the processes what we are doing this morning. So basically, it could also be seen as a decision or action or activity pursued by an actor or set of actors. So largely, if we look at policies this way, they tend to reflect the fact that there may be an idea, it may be an action or an activity which is intentional, followed by a series of actors to achieve a particular impact. Largely, policies are not the same as policy influence. So basically, when we are looking at policy influence, we are looking at how external actors are able to interact. Both external and even internal actors are able to interact with the policy-making processes to be able to affect the course of action or approaches that will favor their interest or their desire. So largely, in the political context, every actor has an interest. Even let's take the political actors out. Even as individuals, we all have interests. If you are an individual and don't have interests, then I'm not sure how I'm going to describe you. We all have interests. Maybe you want to make money. You are following a boyfriend or a girlfriend because you want to make money. You are marrying a man or woman because you want to make money, or you need the influence, or you need the prestige. We all have ideas. Even sometimes when parents send their kids or ask their kids to do something, they have an interest. When kids speak to their parents about a problem or challenge, they have an interest. We all have an interest to achieve. But sometimes the challenge is that we do not actually state our interest clearly or directly in certain circumstances, especially where we believe that it is going to be interpreted as being selfish or greedy. So I may want to achieve my interest, but I tell you, oh, this will help you if you do A, B, C, D. And knowing that if you do A, B, C, D, I will benefit indirectly. I'll be pushing you to do that. So, for example, there are a lot of people who advise the president. They say, oh, president, if you do this, the country will love you. You can even go 100 times. You do this, you do that. But behind the scenes, they know that hey, if the president just do this, then I'm a millionaire. Right? But they will tell, oh, president, if you do this, my company or my family will benefit. The president will say he won't do it. Or he will have a deeper reflection. But people usually couch their interest in terms of public interest. And when we even come back to theories that explains voter behavior, one of those theories is what we call the rational choice theory. And the rational choice theory explains voter behavior in terms of rationality, that people make decisions, voter decisions, because they are being rational. They analyze the policies, they look at the individual, they do everything, and then they vote. But even theoretically, within the rational voter behavior, we have two types of rationality, the egotropic and the sociotropic. The egotropic rationality is people exercising rationality in terms of personal benefit. So if you come and give me iPhone 17 Pro Max, or you buy me Bugatti, or you give me 100, or you buy me flat screen, or you get my daughter award scholarship to go abroad, I'll vote for you. That's rational, right? My child is very good. He finished school. He's looking for scholarship to study. And then you want vote and say, oh, if you vote for me, I'll let your daughter go to Harvard and study law. Why not? Right? I'm being rational. Other than just vote for you and go and sleep, trusting that you do good and I'll benefit. Right? That is different from somebody who thinks that you have to tar our rules, or no water, no vote, no pipe, how am I going to say? No clinic, no vote, no this, no vote. In that case, your rationality is anchored on what? The communal or societal interest. So we call them sociotropic rational voters. Their interest is more about societal benefit, right? But even those who have egotropic rationality, I'll say that, oh, but you are saying I'm being greedy. If my daughter go to Harvard and study law and come back and you have a problem with the police, won't he help you? I'm couching my personal rationality in terms of what? The collective. So definitely, what's happened to the slides? Sorry? So largely, when we are looking at policy influence, it's more about how the policy making cycles are influenced, or quote and unquote interfered with, or impacted to achieve a specific benefit. So for example, if I'm an NGO focusing on child rights, right? Every bill or any issue that has to do with the interest of the child that's brought to the House of Parliament, we'll try to make sure that we are not even going to leave the bill to the politicians, because they think as for the politicians, they are always politicians. So the civil society will be very, very active from the conceptualization stage throughout the processes to make sure that the policy is formulated and well done to be able to achieve the desired interest. So the whole, what's happening? No, you've gone to the last slide. Don't you have a pointer? So largely, when we are looking at policy influence, it's about exerting so much interest or so much power to be able to make sure that policies that are so conceptualized and formulated and implemented are done to the level that people achieve the intended benefit or significance or interest at the end of the day. We have trouble with my slides. So largely, one of the ways that we can understand the level of policy influence is to understand. Can you move to the next slide, please? Oh, this is too bad. So largely, there were different levels of the policy-making processes. And one of the ways that we can influence the policy-making processes is to understand the stages through which a policy is conceptualized, and then okay. So I'm just going to speak to it briefly because it's not clear. I don't think you can see from where you are. So largely, when people have an idea, those ideas are actually channeled through maybe parliament to get it passed into an act so that it now binds our lifestyles as people. So usually, if it's through a sector minister or a government policy, the respective minister or ministry lays the policy beforehand. So there will be a lot of background work that will be done in the formulation and write-up, and then it's finally laid to parliament. So when it's laid to parliament, the bill is read for the first time with a long title. So one of the ways, I'll be looking at this, even though there's a specific slide for it, one of the ways that civil society can interact with the policy making processes is through even the conceptualization stage. So when people are conceptualizing the bill, the minister will say that the government is going to pass this particular bill or formulate this particular bill and make it an act of parliament. That's the point civil society can engage sector ministers and be able to make a whole lot of impact. Then moves to Parliament House late before Parliament the long title is read for the first time, and then after that the bill is referred to the respective committee. So maybe if it's something that has to do with women and children's rights, maybe the subcommittee on human rights or the subcommittee on gender and ministerial affairs will take it up. And then they will also have a sitting. Usually what they do is that they invite the public, they go around, they collect their data, they interview people. The public can appear. Maybe civil society organizations can appear and contribute to that policy. They can write a petition. They can even submit a whole lot of evidence or information to actually shape that particular bill. And then I think there hasn't been a bill that has generated so much public participation. I may be wrong, compared to the proper sexual orientation bill. That's the LGBT bill last year. We saw coalition of wills, not coalition of wills, I think consensus of wills. So the Muslim, the religious groups, all the sects in Islam, the Shia, the Sunnis, the whatever, they all submitted petitions. All the sects in Christianity, they all submitted traditional leaders, a whole lot of people. So that's at the stage. And they even invited experts. Most of the committees will do that. They invite experts, either academia, civil society, to appear before the commission and make a meaningful contribution that can help influence it. So the committee now brings it back to parliament. The bill is read for the second time. Comments are invited. If people have contributions to make, is done. And then there's a referral. Amendments are done. Then it's brought for the third time. And then after the third time reading, if everything is fine, it's now transmitted to the presidency. And then the president, if the president is satisfied with it, will assent his signature and it becomes law. At that particular point in time, it will be very difficult for you to influence or change anything. But the president may also refuse to assent to the bill to become law. So when that happens, the president will have to notify parliament within 2 weeks, I think, right back to the clerk of parliament, said that I am not happy with these particular sections of the bill. And for that matter, you have to change it before I sign. Or just say that I will not sign it. I don't like the whole bill. So if that happens, what parliament may do is that if parliament can marshal to test majority in simple terms, then they can override the presidential veto and compel the president to be able to sign the law. And I think what happened with this LGBT bill was the fact that there was a whole lot of political gymnastics that happened when the bill was finally done. And that was even a private member's bill. It was done by a selection of MPs from both the majority and the minority side in the 8th Parliament. So when that happened, the president couldn't assent to the bill because an individual, a citizen went to court to place an injunction on the president signing the bill. And there was a lot of interpretations to who that individual was, whether he was a political animal or a political being. And this, but the long and short of it was that the secretary to the president had to write to the speaker, the speaker to the clerk, and said, "Don't transmit this bill because there's a pending legal issue, and the president will not be." So, technically speaking, it died a natural death. It died with the eighth parliament. In actual fact, if the president didn't want to assign, it was transmitted to the president. The president would have been compelled, if he wasn't going to sign, to write back to parliament and say, "I won't assent to this bill, and these are my reasons." And then parliament will now decide whether they can marshal to test majority to override the veto of the president. And since the beginning of parliamentary democracy in the Fourth Republic, this is the only time, that is the ninth parliament, that we have a particular party commanding two-thirds majority. So the NDC has two-thirds majority in parliament, including the other independent candidate. Even without the independent candidate, the NDC have two-thirds. So the NDC can do anything in parliament except change a man into a woman and a woman into a man. But in the eighth parliament, it was technically a hung parliament. It was one independent candidate who was actually giving a majority side the majority. And it was very interesting for Ghanaian politics because people took parliament serious, and people actually expressed a whole lot of interest in what parliament was doing. But now, I think the NDC has taken more than half. The MPP is just at a corner. But technically speaking, if it was at this particular point, this ninth parliament, that this had happened, and then the president wrote back to parliament, and it was maybe a three-line whip from the NDC side, they would have been able to override the veto of the president and get the bill passed. So there are a whole lot of entry points. One of the key entry points is the initiation of the bill. At the time that they were thinking about it, the consultation stage, and then also when it goes to the committee stage, that is where there will be a lot of engagement and a lot of impact can be made. But also, if civil society organizations support that bill, once the bill is passed, they can engage in advocacy and see how it can be implemented in a way that the desired outcome is achieved. Chief, the next slide. So when we are talking about, so that's how the bill looks like, the processes of making laws. But even in influencing, so once the law is made, how is it influenced? In policy-making processes, we have different levels of policy-making processes. But the most common procedure is what we call the linear model. So the linear model starts with agenda setting, policy formulation, decision-making, policy implementation, and then monitoring and evaluation. And CSOs, individuals, government, academic institutions can influence the policy-making processes at each stage of the policy cycle. Even at the time that you are thinking about it, that is the agenda setting stage. Usually they use the media to inform people about the policy and its relevance. There may be a public engagement to talk to people, to do town halls and assemble meetings, the essence of the policy and why that policy is very important and all those things. That is a very essential point that we can engage. Then the second level, when we move from the agenda setting to formulating that particular policy, it's also another entry point for CSOs to be able to engage largely with the policy-making processes and see how they can change the course of action to favor them or to favor their constituents. And then once you move from that level, then you go to the decision-making stage, and then you go to the policy implementation, and then so at every stage of the policy cycle, they can be an influence. Can we move to? Good. So the policy-making cycle is surrounded by actors, and each actor has an interest. So the actors may include state organizations. Every bill that we pass in this country invokes international interests. So the LGBT bill, for example, we heard what the West were saying, you won't get aid, we'll stop giving you aid. Even people believe that the MPs who were privately sponsoring these bills, their travel abroad, they were denied visa, they were delayed, there's an interest. So definitely states have interests. And the states will not just sit down, they will influence every stage of the policy-making process to make sure their interest is achieved. right? There are global civil society organizations who have an interest. So maybe Amnesty International, if it has to do with human rights, global, what's it called, Human Rights Watch, if it has to do with human rights, and all those international bodies that may have an interest in a local policy that may affect people's ability to exercise or redeem their rights. So they will be very closely monitoring all the policy stages and try to influence. Even if they fail at the agenda setting, they move to formulation. If they fail, they move to decision making. If they fail, they move to policy implementation. Even if they fail, they may get NGOs money to monitor and evaluate the policy and to not favor you. You know, so they will still find a way to do that. We have multinational corporations, transnational corporations. We have organized crimes group who also have interests. The mafia have an interest in the kind of policy you have in your county. If your county is used as a transit route to smuggle their drugs, and they can influence MPs, they can influence government appointees, they can influence state employees, they can even influence citizens to rise against a particular policy. We have religious bodies and we have other actors, so SNV and Plan International and all the other internationals. No, they have an interest. So the actors will influence every stage of the policy. But they do not just do that. They also influence, so actors influence what? Policy making processes. So move to the next slide. So each of these actors will try to influence each of the policy making process. Yeah, move to the next level. That's fine. So what they also do, it's okay. Can you go back a bit for me? Go back a bit. Go back a bit. Then that's fine. So what we see is that every actor in terms of policy influence will try to influence every stage of the policy cycle, right? From A up to B, they all do that. But they do not just influence the policy making process, they also influence other actors. So if I'm an international organization, I will be influencing the policy making process, but also mobilize local NGOs or CSOs who are like-minded like me and push them. Charlie, let's do this. So I'll rally religious groups. If you sit down, they are taking your rights away. I'll go to the community. The MPs, I'll call them, the MPs on the select committee. Oh, Ghana, if it's this be one of the best places you can get the best example, it's America. So we'll fly you to America, you see best cases, and then you come back. They fly you first class ticket. You go there, you stay in the best of hotels you have never seen. You only see them on TV. You get some good money to do shopping. You have some nice views. And say, see, this is how, this is the best way you can assign the policy, right? And when you go back and you make sure this policy is passed well, you see what will happen to you. So MPs have been influenced. Select committee. Then they now can say, hey, so I'm an MP. So let's see how they organize a good workshop. Maybe Safari Valley or Echo something. You've been hearing the name, you've never been there. They will take good care of you. You have a boat ride, you shoot animals. So they'll do that. They will come. And state, they will look at other actors, religious bodies. They will build you a cathedral you've never seen in your life. They will build you a good mosque. They will put the imam on salary. They will get you a Bugatti, imam in Bugatti. The religious groups, they will push them. Organized crimes, they will push the actors. So they will be pushing the policy processes one after the other. And they also build partnership with what? Other actors to make chief. So you can now move on. So yeah. So one at a time. Go back. One at a time. One at a time. Go back. So that's fine. So you can move to the next. Just do once. Click once. Yes. So they will be influencing click the other. So they'll be influencing the policy processes as well. So it's a kind of complex mix. Both the policy making processes and the actors that are also interested in the policy. And sometimes the actors may have the same interests. In that case, it's very easy for them to build a partnership or coalition. But there may be other actors that are also opposed to the policy making process. So you try and see how you can win them over. So at the end of the day, is both pushing the linear policy model processes and pushing what actors who may also have interest in that particular policy making. Can we move to the next slide? So The strategies that may be employed, apart from the influence bit, are manifold, but I just want to speak to four for the sake of time. So the first one basically has to do with what? Evidence. One of the entry points for CSOs in policy influencing is to build evidence. Chief, next slide. So how do you build evidence? You can never understand and influence a policy until you know it and understand it and are aware of it. So there are a lot of things that happens around us that we don't even know. Oh, there are some, this bill is, which bill is that? Because he has never heard about it. So awareness creation or information is one of the most important empowering tools in CSO business or in policy influence business. So how do we get evidence? You can't influence a policy without evidence or data. So one of the ways we can do it, or CSO's point of entry, is to conduct their own research, primary research. And I think there are a lot of CSOs. So if there's an issue about child abuse in care or foster homes in Ghana, you've been hearing it. How do you ascertain the veracity? You do your own research. You can commission an individual or a group to investigate it. Then they come up with findings, a report. They now study the report, and based on the evidence of the report, you can now engage policymakers. Because sometimes our MPs are not stupid. And if you look at the global data now, Ghana's members of parliament have one of the most highest qualified people. PhD holders, professors, doctors, master degree holders, engineers, lawyers, teachers. So they understand data. And you can't just come and speak to him and you have to convince him with evidence. And one of the ways that you can do it is to do primary research. But if you don't have money to do your own research, there are a lot of existing data you can rely on. So government, they can come from governmental sources. So the Ghana Statistical Service, if you go to the Ghana Statistical Service website, there's a lot of data on a whole lot of things that you can rely on. Or if you go to other non-governmental websites, so CDD runs the Afro Barometer. There are a whole lot of other organizations in this country that do a whole lot of work that you can rely on. So the Afro Barometer data is one of the best you can use in policy influence. So you can also use academic work. So if you go to University of Ghana library, say the BAM library. So most departments have libraries, departmental libraries. The most halls of residence have libraries. But bigger library is the BAM library. There are a whole lot of interesting research done about things you have never imagined. That is gathering dust in there. Right? You may not know. But instead of spend money and go and do your own research, maybe you need something about the social behavior of maybe pregnant women in their first trimester. Maybe go to social work or sociology department. There might have been a work like that lying down. So largely, I remember when I was the head of Department of Political Science at the University of Ghana, I had to work with the Parliamentary Training Institute, a Parliament House, I think we built a partnership. And the idea was that any research from the department that relates to the work of Parliament or speaks to Parliament, we should network with them so that they can have a scanned copy and upload it on their parliamentary library services. For example, if you go to America, one of the best center of resource is the Congress Library. So if there's any bill that's going to be passed about any country or anywhere, and you go to that bill, the Congressional Library, you can get every information you need to be able to debate adequately in Congress. So an MP without data or evidence is no MP. And one of the things that Parliament, if you are elected as MP, one of the two things, the first two employment you make is your RA and your PA, your research assistant and your parliamentary public personal assistant, because of the importance of what? Research. So every MP has a research assistant. They are supposed to do background information for you before you go and debate, so I don't go and sit down and look so stupid. So it's very important that academic works are considered. There are whole lot of interesting information and evidence that you may need to make a particular campaign or advocacy without knowing. There are also international research institutes like the Pew Research Institute in America and several whole lots of them. But even NGOs and CSOs, what they also do is that sometimes not even direct engagement. So you've done a whole lot of work on maybe child rights in Ghana and the extent to which our laws respect or lack of that in the protection of children. This is it's not everybody who can read maybe 60 or 100-page report. So what you can do it in a policy brief, maybe half a page, and design it in such a way that if somebody picks it within 2 minutes or 3 minutes, he gets the import of the research, right? So if an MB needs to say something about that particular issue and realize that, oh, this particular organization has done such a work, and the report is 100,000, but you can only pick half a page and read it and says everything about that report, it makes a whole lot of sense. So even policy briefs, you can do policy briefs, you can do position papers, you can do a whole lot of research papers, and then policy positions. So there's a particular issue that is of concern to everybody, maybe the energy sector and what we are going to do, whether it's doom or is so or doom so or whatever case it is. An NGO, say ASEP, a CSO like ASEP that works in the energy sector, can do a position paper based on our work and research and understanding. We think these are the major causes of our current energy crisis, and we think this is how government should deal with it. It's a position paper. You've taken that position clearly based on evidence, whether government supports it or not. That is another level of thing you're thinking. Then if they don't support your position, then you have to counter your evidence with their own evidence. Right? So these are some of the ways information and evidence and data is very central. People take you serious if this happens. And one of the things, the new development in our political discourse is the fact that because data and information is very critical, now there is a question. If you read the works of Ninsin, Kofi Dwa, and some extent Professor Michael Kwe, they have made a distinction between what they call democratic civil society organizations and then pro-civil society organizations. So the democratic civil society organizations are civil society organizations that do research work and use the evidence to influence data for the course of action of everybody. But the pro-democratic or the pro-civil society group or the anti-democratic are alternative. So he calls them, Dwyer refers to them as alternative civil society. They are created by a political party or an individual or an organization that is sympathetic to a particular political party, and that creates evidence, either fake or otherwise, to counter existing credible evidence. So, for example, CDD Afrobarometer is a credible civil society. They say that incidence of corruption in the current government has risen, and government has to do something. So the next day, a panel discussion, MPP say, Afrobarometer, it has said it. We have all been thinking about this. Afrobarometer has confirmed it. Then the next day, there's an NGO that is set up by one of the NDC people. They also do that and come and say, since the beginning of the Fourth Republic, no government had fought corruption than this government. So in the next discussion, you quote Afrobarometer, you also called GDC NGO. You are all using data, right? And we have even seen it. Even polls, you see it more as the presidential thing comes closer. The next day, Musa Dankwa says, this person is leading. The next day, this person is leading. There's another person whose name is not coming across. Oh, he also go and get someone and say, Charlie, let me also lead. So the next day, another post comes out, he's also leading. You can't say mine is not credible. You have your data, I also have my data. So some of the dangers is that because evidence and data is very central to policy influence, people even fake data to get that level of credibility to influence policy or to sabotage policy. So even though this is very important, we also have to exercise caution, because you see the next day, hey, this person is Chairman Joe is leading. When the next day, then somebody is leading. So even CSOs and other organizations can manufacture data to get it done. So evidence. But the second level of strategy is participation. Even when we have the evidence and we don't participate, we can't influence policy. It's more about participation. And when you look at participation, I think it's one of the most important ritual that is linked to influence. Repeated participation can create influence. Can you move to the next slide? This is too bad, but there's this particular fantastic scholar called Einstein. He did this work. She did this work in 1969, And I'm not sure, there's no way, okay, don't touch it so that it will go off. He has actually looked at stages of but you can Google it. So if you go to Google, just type Einstein ladder of participation, ladder, LADDER. So he has categorized levels of participation. So at the bottom of the ladder is what she has non-participation. So if you are doing any of this, illegal dress, putting people under illegal dress, conflict, fighting people, legitimate coercion, or manipulation, they all constitute non-participation. If you are doing that, it doesn't influence the policy much. If you move from the non-participation to the second level, we call it tokenism. And the tokenistic participation constitutes advice. So government want to do something. Then to assemble, they have finished the bill, everything is done. They do not assemble CSOs and come and say, oh, government intend to do this and this, and to help your work this way, this way. How do you say it? Oh, say it's not good, it's good, then government will listen and go. Government, you say government didn't consult you. You know. So, but that doesn't mean participation. He's only seeking your opinion or just validating what he wants to do through you. Right? So if you look at advice, consultation, information, it doesn't actually constitute participation. They are just getting your buy-in or buying your legitimacy for them to do what they want to do. But if you move to the third level, that's what she calls citizen empowerment. You own the policy-making process from the beginning up to the end, in the formulation up to the decision-making process, and even in its implementation. So if you own the policy-making process, definitely your interest and buy-in will be there. Rather than somebody doing everything and come and hold a town hall meeting or invite all CSOs to a very beautiful retreat and say, oh, this is what government is trying to do, and this is how it's going to help CSOs, and if you support it, we'll move forward. They all get some fat envelopes for TNT, and then that is it. That's not influence because you don't have so much to do. So definitely, he has looked at categorization of this policy scale into 3. So you are looking at illegal duress, legitimate coercion, manipulation, information, consultation, advice, collaboration, delegated power, and delegated control. Up to that. So you can get the article and read it. It's very interesting. Can we move to the next slide? So the second level is participation. But even in participation, awareness and willingness is very important. So one of the dominant concepts in participation now in the literature is what we call the concept of active citizenship. Even as citizens, so citizenship largely is about, in the previous literature, it was focused on what? Individuals belonging, you belonging to a particular state. I'm an American, I'm a British, I'm a Ghanaian, I'm this. So it's citizenship. But to what extent does your citizenship influence the course of action in your country to benefit people or the larger population? So active citizenship is very important. It is concerned primarily with questioning duty bearers, how they perform their duties, and its impact or implication on our lives as people. Right? If you can move to the next slide. And there have been Afrobarometer data that suggests that Ghanaians are not actually active citizens. I'm not saying all of us, at least some level of us. So they asked the question, I think this was, I think both around 8, 9, and 10 of their surveys. They asked people, popular ratings of citizens' engagement with the state. And then the question is, how often do you contact your member of parliament? Never or once in a few times. In 2002, never or once in a few times was 87%. In 2005, it was 83%. 2000, 85%. 2012, 86%. 2015, 87%. 2018, 84%. So just look at the range that is going. How often have you contacted your member of parliament about an issue that bothers you? Never or once. Look at the number. Right? And then the next question, how often have you contacted your local government councillor about an issue that bothers you? Never or once in a lifetime. Look at the numbers too. 85, 80 something. How often have you contacted a political party official, NDC official or NPP official or GDC PP or PPP or group? How often? And the numbers are staggering. How often have you contacted a government official at a ministry and expressed an issue that we are not actively engaging? the state and the decision-making processes. And without active citizenship, you can't influence policy. Can we move to the next slide? Then the other one was, in terms of active citizenship, citizens' engagement in community meetings and communal actions. Community meetings, communal actions. So how often do you attend community meetings? So you have a very bad road in your neighborhood. And then there's a community, how do you call them, watchdog or vigilante, not these bulldogs, action troopers vigilante, communal vigilante groups. How often have you attended those meetings to deliberate about the welfare of your area or locality? And once, no. So those who have never done that, 22, 6, 8, 16, no, but we'll do it if I had the chance. That, yes, once or twice or several times. That. Then joining others to raise an issue. So maybe there's problem about water supply in your area. People are talking. Oh, okay. Sakwame and Co, they should do it. You don't want to join them to raise it. So that I don't want people to tag you or give you a name. Maybe if it's under MPP, you don't want to come and say you are NDC. If it's under NDC, you don't want to come and say you are MPP. Then which P are you? Because if the issue is affecting you, you should have the voice to speak. Especially where people are championing it, you should join them. So how often have you joined others in your community to raise an issue? The figures are very low. Attend demonstrations or protests. There's a bill that's going to stifle children's rights. And people's NGOs, civil society working in that area say, let's come out and protest because you have tried to lobby government, now everything is not working. Say, hey, as for this one, who will come and protest? Me? You like your life, right? Or you want to enjoy, or you don't want to die, right? You won't go out. Maybe largely because of the way our police also, people say that in the developed democracies, when citizens, it's a part of participation. Protest is one of the most active citizen engagement to the policy processes. So in other places, when people come out to protest, the police protect them. They say in other parts of the world, when they come out to protest, Charlie, you go home and you understand your body again. The whippings and the hot water you endure, right? So, but I also believe that where people come out and protest peacefully, I don't think the police have a cause to start beating you, right? But when you begin to block traffic, you begin to smash car windows or cause trouble, then police will be compelled to take that action against you. But often people don't join protests. And it is one of the most important. But people often say that maybe in the developed world, when there's a scandal or political problem, and people come out to demonstrate in their numbers, it could trigger resignation. Maybe the government or the minister or the individual concerned may resign. Here, you can put your head down and protest. Until the minister, the president say, if you don't resign, I'll fire you. Then that's what, protest here, to let somebody resign. It's looking at the monies, the kickbacks, resign, protest. You lie bad. You can come and sleep, lay camp and sleep on his doorstep, you won't resign. Politics, hey, see how difficult to get appointment. Somebody protest and you resign. Africa. For who to see? Right? But it is an essential component and we need to join them. And then those are the level of engagement. So the last bit I just want to look at basically has to do with I think it's the same thing, preparedness to attend a demonstration or protest. So you look at Ghana figures against other countries' figures. And you tend to see that how prepared are we? Benin 48, no, we'll never do this. Benin 48, Botswana 48, Ghana 67, South Africa 37. So in Ghana, 67% of people are not willing, said no, they will never join a protest. Compared to maybe 48.6 in Botswana, 48.3 in Benin, and 37 in South Africa. And the same thing about no, but I'll do it if there's a chance. You still see that we are lagging behind. Yes, once or twice, I'll join it. Botswana is still very high. Ghana is still low. No, Ghana, I think that we are doing better than Benin, 3.0, 3.8, up to that level. So basically, the active citizenship part is a very essential component to policy influence, repeated participation. Can we move to the next slide, please? So basically, the last bit I want to talk about has to do with what we call the Mandela interest power matrix. Mendelow, MendowDOLOW, interest power matrix. So he talks about policy influence. He said that to be able to influence policy, two things must interact. It's a matrix. So he says here is power, and he divides power into high power and low power. So we have high power actors and low power actors, and on the other side is what he called interest or incentive for change. And we have strong interest and then what? Weak interest. So when you put somebody with high power and a strong interest to get something changed, they categorically fall in the box called box A1. When somebody has very high power but very weak interest to make a change, they fall under A2. Then when you have somebody with low power but very strong desire or interest to get something changed, A3, A4. In policy making circles, usually people or NGOs or CSOs that fall under box A1 are usually those that are the change makers or drivers. One, so if let's pick say international level politics. The United States of America is a high power actor because it's a global hegemon, right? If there is an issue that concerns the protection of the state of Israel, the US have very high interest. The US can even go to war to defend the state of Israel. So it means that the US have high power and very strong interest to protect the interests of Israel at the global stage. So whatever it is that has to do with Israel, the US will do it. Or you pick, say, the US as a high power actor against maybe the protection of LGBT rights, especially when the Democratic Party is in power. You tend to see that they will do everything to protect the rights of what? Those community. So it's a high power actor with strong interest to get that particular bill passed. So if it's a civil society organization, maybe let's say Amnesty International. If you assume that Amnesty International is a high power actor and it is issues about human rights across the world, that is their passion. So they will do everything to fight it. But you can also be a high power actor if the issue that is of concern you have no interest in the issue that's of concern. You say anything, right? So the US may think that, oh, I don't care whether Israel has nuclear weapons or not. Even though it's a high power actor, they are not bothered about it. They have what? Very weak interest. But when it comes to Iran having a nuclear weapons, the US have a very high interest of preventing Iran from having a nuclear weapon. And they will do everything, couldn't go into war to stop it. Or maybe, if it's about war and the prevention of war, maybe if Sudanese are fighting, who cares about Sudan, right? Even all the high power actors have not even said, oh, the UN Security Council should meet over the Sudanese crisis and see how we deal with it. They have the power to do that, but they don't care about what happens in Sudan. Compared to maybe if it's the Middle East or maybe Iran has blocked the Strait of Hormuz, that one, there will be all the effort to unblock it because they have interest. So it's not every powerful actor who will try to influence particular policy if it is not of their interest. So the Mendelow, you can read more about it after this presentation. It's one of the best ways that you can understand policy influence and policy interface. So I've just been told that my time is... So this last slide, then we'll wrap up. So what are the entry points again? One, awareness creation. So one of the things CSOs can do is to increasingly create awareness, especially about areas or topics or issues that they think are of collective concern or of specific concern to their mission as an NGO. So maybe if it's SOS Children's Villages, we are more interested about the rights of children. And what we can do is to increasingly create awareness about children's rights and its abuse when it is done or committed. So we have to problematize the issue. The fact that there is an issue or a problem in society doesn't mean that everybody understands it or accepts it as a problem. So CSOs will have to problematize the issue. So just like those who did MPhil or PhD or wrote first degree, you always have a problem statement in your work. It's not that people don't understand what you're doing, yourself, but how do you frame it as a problem? Because in every chaos, there's benefit. So David King says that in war, so we are all saying war is not good. People make trillions of dollars by just fighting war. So what is happening in the Middle East, and people are crying, oh, that is a cash cow for some people. So they don't see it as a problem. So it is the duty of CSOs as a point of entry to problematize issues that is of significant concern to them. Let people, so it's about galamsey. If I'm doing illegal mining, whether the water body is polluted or not, I don't care, as long as I get my dollar from the gold. We, those who are affected, those who drink that water or use it to farm, will have to problematize the galamsey issue as a problem and not as a benefit. Then it is then that we are able to gather evidence to do that, and then it now becomes a national discourse and a national problem, and the solution is sought for it. But if you just sit down, the galamsey people get their money, go and bribe the people who are supposed to stop them, and then it continues. You have to stand up and create a problem out of it. So CSOs can what? Create awareness and identify problems from issues that are of benefit to them. Create or use available data or research evidence. They will have to provide, they can do research on a very important issue and disseminate it. Or they can do what? Use available data to disseminate, to create that level of awareness. Encourage active citizenship. So some of these workshops and meeting together creates opportunity for us to what? Actively engage and encourage people to participate in the decision-making process. So they can encourage active citizenship. They can build coalitions or networks or partnership. So there's a particular issue, and you think that you bridge alone cannot handle that issue. You can get other partners who also have interest in that area. Then you now build a coalition. So we have CONIWAS, coalition, or is it what? Is it health and water? Water and sanitation. So CONIWAS, if CONIWAS is going to influence policy on water and sanitation, they'll be more powerful than maybe you've breached alone trying to do that. Right? So one of the ways we can do is to identify like-minded organizations and build partnership and coalitions with them to be able to influence policy. Lobbying skills. Policy making process is a skill. Lobbying the policy making process is a skill. Capacity building and shifting interest, especially in the middle interest actor dynamics, can help. Creating or providing reliable funding source. It's not easy influencing policy. You need money, right? So we have to find a way we can partner, we can provide resources to be able to get that done. Evaluation, assessment, critique of existing policies. So CSOs can also see that as an ending point. There's already an existing policy, but you think it's not working well, or there are gaps. You can take it as an initiative, provide a constructive criticism of those existing policies, and create an alternative or suggest an alternative. And I think if you're able to do this, there may be a very good point of entry and then a strategy to get our things done. I thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Prof. I was enjoying the session too much that Gloria had to be the one to come and say time out. Okay, great. Thank you again. This was really, really insightful. Please, you can sit. But we'll leave room for a few questions as we inch closer to the end, and then we can wrap up for today. I see a hand at the back. Okay. I'll leave this with you, Prof, and then as people ask their questions, you can answer. Okay, the second hand. Okay, so let Mr. Julius go first.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the presentation. Prof, my question has got to do with we as CSOs. We need funds to do our work. How do we insulate ourselves? How do we insulate ourselves from a situation where as CSO need money, we are not used for people who have an interest using it through us to let it sound or look like it's a collective interest, because we need money, we need resources to work, and when such agencies or international organizations come to us, maybe they may have individual interests, but they want to push it through us to ensure that it becomes a collective interest to ensure a policy. How do we insulate ourselves against that? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Prof, would you want us to take a number of questions for you to answer, or would you want to answer one after the other?
So maybe we can take the first
A few
three
more.
before.
Okay, yes, please. There was a hand over there. Okay, so we'll take this two and then we can answer and move on. His hand was up, so we'll take his question and then we'll take yours.
Thank you very much. I think Dr. Norman is gone. Okay. But, Prof, please, we are a mix of players in the child protection fight. We include government officials. We also have CSOs available. From the start, you were very, very glad that we were invited to come and give this presentation. Have we been able to influence you? Because from the past speakers, they made mention of the professionalization of our work. So have we been able to influence you to the extent that you can lead when we come to you as the MP? Right now, I'm speaking to you as a lecturer, but have we been able to influence you so that you lead in the professionalization that we are talking about? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Prof. Super Prof, as I mentioned to you earlier when we were on break, the Social Work Council bill naturally died, resurrected, died, and is yet to resurrect again. How best can you assist, and colleagues over here, how best can we assist so that when it resurrects again, it will not die? Meaning, when it resurrects, it will be passed. Because without that, social workers and all of us over here are suffocating. We also don't want to naturally die. That one, when we go, we will not come again. Oh. We will not come again, and we don't want us to get there. Another issue is about passing citizens not fully participating in the policy-making processes. Is it because whatever they do, they don't get it? That is why. And last but not the least, is about the morality of parliamentarian in passing a bill or making a policy in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll turn over to Prof to answer these three, and then we'll take the next set of questions.
Okay, thank you so much. The first one has to do with source of funds and whether
I'm sorry.
it can become an avenue for people to impose their will or interest on us. Yes, I agree. I think there's a popular saying that he who pays the piper dictates the tune. And aid, if you read Dambisa Moyo and all those scholars who have written extensively about aid, they have always seen it as a leverage to influence and quote and unquote dump people's national or parochial interests on us. So it's true. I've already mentioned that one of the ways that we can influence policy properly is to be well resourced. Now, most of the resources usually come from the global north. And the global north, like I mentioned, using the Mendel's actor interest dynamics matrix, they will never give you money on something they don't have an interest in. They account for how they spend their citizens' money. So for them to give you so much money to do something, there's an interest, there's a national interest behind it. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't work with them, but you have to exercise caution. But to the best of your ability, try to be independent. So I think now there's a whole lot of literature on global philanthropy, and global philanthropy taking over this whole concept of aid and support from other countries. And locally, there have been a lot of philanthropic organizations that are actually supporting people wholeheartedly on issues that they believe in. So there's also an interest element there. But two, organizations should try as much as possible to raise IGF. Get something to do. It could be craft, it could be anything. If you do so good research and you do position papers, policy papers, research findings, you can put some small token. You know, if you need this kind of research, the report, full report, you have to pay this amount of money for it. So NGOs, sorry, civil society organizations should try as much as possible to find a way to generate revenue. It may be very small, but as you do it and you move along, you get to a point you become independent. But lastly, I think one of the most popular things now in the era of the internet is crowd funding, right? Or is it crowdsourcing? Basically, you can do a lot to do social media across the world on people who believe in the issue that you are pushing to do, to be able to see. At the beginning, you can be 100% independent, but once you start with donor support and donor funding, try as much as possible to create an avenues that can also lift you higher a bit to the level that you are now partners. You know, you contribute 50, or you even take charge of implementing all your policies. But until we do that, definitely there's nothing like free lunch. If anybody, international organization or state entity is giving you money to do something, there is an interest behind it. So we'll have to find a way. If we align to that interest, yes, take the money and do it. I've ever done a work for an organization called PASGA, a Partnership for African Social, and Governance Research, based in Nairobi, Kenya. To the extent, even as part of the training, even the structure for the report was provided to us. Even how the report should be structured, issues you should capture, the issues you shouldn't capture, was part of the appendix of the money, the donor funding. So if you want a scholar to do a work for you, why don't you give the scholar the leeway to actually write they have found? You know, let them do the work and tell, this is what we have found. Whether you like it or not, you work with it. That's the reality. But even if the structure of the report is already given to you before you even go to the fall, it means they know what they want, right? So definitely, it will be very difficult. At the beginning, you have to succumb to some of those things. But as you move along, try as much as possible to see how you can get alternative sources of income to be able to do your work. Whether I will lead in influencing policies, or why not? There's a little bit of complexity to it. As an individual, if I didn't believe in what you are doing, I wouldn't even come here. There's a committee meeting going on. I was in the committee meeting. That's why I wasn't part of the opening session. I'm doing a committee work, a parliamentary select committee. So I've been in the meeting since morning up to this time. Then I asked permission from my committee chair and I came. And from here, I'm going back. So it wasn't that I was free. But because I believe in what you are doing, that's why I'm here. But as I mentioned, if you go into that business, then you understand that there are a whole lot of interest in the collective. So sometimes even in parliamentary business also, we are familiar with it. Parliamentary dealings come with whips. So we say we have, mostly the parliamentary system have what we call whips. So the chief whip and then their minority. They are supposed to technically whip you in line, right? And we have 3 levels of whip. When there's a policy issue in parliament and it's a one-line whip, it means your party or government of the day don't have so much interest. You can exercise discretion and vote the way you want to vote or advocate for it. If it's a 2-line whip, they have an interest and position, but they are so flexible on that, right? You can't disobey them, but you are flexible enough to exercise your judgment. If they crack a 3-line whip, you are a robot. You have to follow, right? You don't have an interest. And it is very difficult for one person to be able to bring a policy from the first reading up to the last reading. But you also have to speak to other people and influence them to bring them on board. When it comes to that level, I can support you if there's a policy that has to do with this. It's a very important thing about our children and their rights and their welfare. I'm with you 100%, and I'll see how I can also influence my colleague MPs and even parliamentary, even moving to a level of taking you to the speaker to see how best we can get things done. I'm willing to do that. And then, is it the social work bill? Yes. So if you look at the actor interest matrix, there's always a reason why bills don't see the light of the day. It's about the interest, right? I remember during President Kufuor's time, there was this bill. I don't know how many of you remember it, the marital rape bill. I think it was championed a lot by women rights groups and activists, Awula, FIDA, Sejensa, and all those groups. In a very patriarchal legislature, how can a marital rape bill be passed? Especially when in our society we think that, oh, Charlie, as for the woman there, no matter what, it's constant, right? So there are a lot of interests. I'm not sure. Maybe what I have to do for the sake of this question is to get a copy of that bill and read it and see maybe what is contained on it. And then maybe I can also see how I can move to the leadership in parliament and speak to them and see whether we can buy their interest in and see how they can help. There's always no harm in trying. Once you go through it, you can convey, at least some of them may also see reason in it, and then we can build a coalition of like-minded MPs. Maybe start with one. I started by the time I I've recruited 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, and then we can also approach leadership and speak to them, or even move to the speaker and speak to them and say whether we can get their buy-in. So that if it has something to do with maybe political interest and the majority side don't like it, that's where the problem may come. But whichever way it is, there's always no harm in trying. Once I get a copy and I read it and then I send it, I can speak to other colleagues, especially our leadership, and see whether they also have an interest in it, or even if there are challenges with some provisions. Even why was it rejected in the first place? Maybe there were some problems with some provisions in the bill or some schedules or something. Why can't we amend them or reword them or make them more appealing to both sides of the house so that it can be passed? It's something we can do, and that's what we've just demonstrated this afternoon. That when we build coalition of wills, we can go far and achieve a lot. So maybe the next level of 3 set of questions.
Thank you very much, Prof. Okay, there was a hand at the back, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Derry.
Honorable, thank you very much. My question is sentenced in the area of policy implementation, as you alluded to the cycle of policy implementation. 15 years ago, Ghana commenced formulation of a policy, and one of the human rights activists make a statement that we gather there to write a beautiful document, but the implementation will be a problem. As you said, civil society do a lot of awareness raising. But where you sit, as you said in your introductory remark, that now when you go back to classroom, your teaching will be different. I wanted to find out from you, is there a hidden bottleneck when you come to implementation of policy, especially policies that have been put together to address children issue that we are yet to identify and overcome? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you, Prof, for a very inspiring lecture. I wish I was your student, but I always count an A. Yes. So, Prof, I want to ask a question, but based on some experience. When we were developing the child and family welfare policy, we had to seek assistance from the select committee. My colleagues are there. We were at the Parliament House. We had agreed with the select committee to meet at the Parliament House, even 1 hour. They didn't have it for us. Upon that, they were talking of what they would sign and collect. Didn't we vote for you to help us make policies? Do we have to pay you so that you review or you make inputs in the policy? The second experience, we took them to Chance's Hotel in Ho. All of them came with baggages. Line time you go, the food is finished. Meanwhile, you are still in session. The food is finished. Prof. All this is cost. Okay? And the demand is often so high for us. You want to engage with parliamentarians, but when you think of how much because there are people who are negotiating with you, how much you want to pay. I said, myself, but that is the duty of the parliamentarian. You do your work, we will appreciate you. But if you are now telling us we should bring so much before you will meet us, then it defeats the purpose of governance. Okay, my other issue has to do with, in fact, let me put it, NGO-induced participation at the community level. We go to do small work, then you have to provide snack, you have to provide this, you have to provide this. Then when it comes to the popular participation, where they are not providing snack, who will go? Who will come? How do we overcome this? Those are my two humble questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your humble questions. Okay, I'll take one more question. I think after this, maybe we may take one set and then we can wrap up today. Oh, okay, we'll make it four. I saw this hand first, so let me take his question. I'll take yours and then Prof can answer.
Thank you. Just to add up to what my senior colleague just said, it still has to do with policy and reality. When it comes to policy, I think even the little we have currently in the system, we still have some challenges with them. So the question I want to ask, or what I want to know is, have we identified these challenges, these key challenges, whether at the institutional level or whereabout, and who are we holding responsible for this thing? Prof, I don't know if you get my question. Between policy and reality, there are already policies in place, right? The ones that are in place, as far as child protection is concerned, we still have challenges with them. Who are we holding responsible for these enforcement issues and all that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Prof, please permit me to add one last question for this round.
Yeah, okay. So I am Gilbert Esiodu from Chance for Children. So my question, Prof, so I would like to also, like I said, thank you for the section today. But it will be in two parts. So one for Mr. Eric Ayaba. So Prof's section was quite interesting because it showed us that data is very key when we would want to, like as a proposed influence in policies. So I would be very glad that if the document he was talking about on the baseline, we could see the trends that has happened over time, what has been done in the key areas where we talk about child marriage, where we stand now, and then what are the gaps, so that it could help us to be able to make those, like as in policies and then influence. And then also, our brother here talked about the like as implementation gaps. So Prof, so when it happens that way, and we see that these are the gaps, so in the cycle, where do we go again? So where do we start? So that we'll be able to, like as in, always like as address those issues.
Thank you very much. So I'll turn it over to you, Prof, for this set of questions.
Thank you so much. So the first question was challenges in implementation. I think one of the most critical parts of the policy formulation or the policy making cycle is the implementation. You can have a very good, well drafted policy document. But if you don't get the right people to implement it, or you don't implement it the right way, it's going to lead to a great disaster. You can identify the problem, or you can problematize the issue, formulate very good theoretical policy in response to it. But when it comes to implementation, it's not well done. There will be a problem. So that's the most important part of it. And I agree that there have been a whole lot of gaps and challenges in terms of implementation. And one of the ways we can identify, so we can deal with those gaps, is making sure that, one, we get the right people to formulate our policies. We get people with the requisite expertise to implement them. We get people with the requisite expertise to monitor them. But even the context, sometimes, because I know in policy circles, we talk of policy borrowing or lesson drawing. So you can borrow a policy that was formulated in another country to solve a problem. And then you also see that you are facing the same policy challenge or the same realistic situation. Then you can borrow the policy from that particular country and use it. And oftentimes we've seen people come here, they are coming to understudy this particular organization and what they are doing. People come, they are coming to understudy how the Ghana parliamentary system works. People come to understudy how our NHIA is working. All those things happen so that they can learn and go implement in there. Those things happen. But sometimes no problems can ever be the same, and no context can ever be the same. So where we fail to place high importance on the context, we may make a whole lot of mistakes. That's one. But also two, sometimes we can have policies that are very good to address genuine problems that we face, but politicization is too much in our context. Rather than getting the experts to formulate the policy, getting the experts to implement it, we rather think, oh, because it's my party that is bringing the policy, everybody who should be in should be a party person. Whether the person has the expertise or not, he should be in charge. So it becomes, we believe that, oh, if this person has the expertise, but he belongs to party Z and not party G, and the tendency that if he's involved, he will sabotage us. Those things usually happen. So the politicization is one factor. Two, failing to recognize the differences in context. Three, not even using the right caliber of personnel to be able to do that. And even four, profit-driven nature of the people who work in it. Rather than do ABC, they think that, oh, this is an avenue for me to also make profit, right? So rather than buying the necessary equipments for maybe 1 million Ghana cedis per equipment, he will rather go, if you even do 1 million, go and buy 1,000 Ghana one and keep the rest. So at the end of the day, you see that things will not work. What we can do over time, like my colleague brother mentioned, is to, as part of the monitoring and evaluation, we should do a diligent work. We shouldn't listen to politicians. Sometimes whenever I see that, people say, but you're also a politician. I'm not a politician. I'm a member of parliament. So sometimes we have to eschew partisan politicization of policy issues and allow the technocrats to work. And it's also the mischief in active partisan politics in this country. So I remember when George Bush was living in the United States, George Bush Jr., when Obama took over, I think it was Donald Rumsfeld, who was the defense minister then. Obama maintained him for his first year in government as defense minister before he changed him. In Ghana, NPP win and leave an NDC defense minister, or NDC wins and leave an NPP defense minister. It will never happen because there's so much suspicion and hatred in the partisan politics we do in developing countries. That often takes a lot away from us, right? So I think we have to eschew extreme partisanship and get the right people for the right job to be able to move us forward. So we can do a review, policy review, look at the timelines like it's mentioned, identify the gaps in the cycle, and see how we can address them. So if you're able to do that, I think we can do a lot together. Monetization. I wish I was still in the university. I could have spoken to this beautifully, I tell you. But so the next question is about NGO. That's where the politics is coming in. I think I'll speak to you in private about it. I honestly. Okay. So NGO induced participation. So I think that's why I said awareness question is very important. Sometimes we just have to let the people know that what CSOs and NGOs are doing is they don't do it to make money as people. They do it for the benefit of the society in which we all live. So people in communities and societies must own up and volunteer. I think one of the things we lack here so much is the concept of volunteerism. Apart from my first degree, I was trained in Britain. I schooled throughout in Britain, and I've worked in America and other places, both Asia, Europe, and America. I have seen the spirit of volunteerism. People volunteer a lot. Even when I finished my master's degree at the London School of Economics and Political Science, I traveled on my own ticket to Bangkok in Thailand to start an unpaid internship with the UN. On my own ticket. And when I was wrapping up, then they took me. They employed me. Then I started work, but I had to go back to Britain to start my PhD. Then I had to leave the work. Even in school, when we were in school, I was volunteering time. I volunteered for Plan International in Britain. I volunteered for Oxfam. I volunteered for a lot of charities in Britain when I was schooling. At least 1 or 2 hours of my time. Even as a student. Without anything. Just to go and support. What does it do? It gives you experience. It opens you up to a lot of invaluable network. That a lot of opportunities may come. But here, we are so fixated with money that even when you pay them or give them, when you organize a conference and they won't come and you even give them TNT, oh, but look at how much they've given us for TNT. Look at the food we've eaten. Look at that. They even look down upon the sacrifice you are making. But you are doing it for the benefit of every one of us. So I think it is more attitudinal, but to some extent structural. And I believe there should be a lot of awareness creation on attitudinal change. People hardly volunteer here. They don't. And I think that is a spirit we must commandeer and make sure that things work better for us. And if the so-called induced participation, it creates a whole lot of problem for CSO and NGOs. The money that they could have used to do something else, they still sacrifice that part to pay you and give you a whole lot of things. But people still don't appreciate it. I think, and I believe it's not even cultural, because our culture preaches more of volunteer participation. The African culture is largely a volunteering culture, right? We've read about Ubuntu, we've read about all these things about the African concept of philosophy of belonging and creative collective benefit. So I think something has to be done about it. Challenges in existing child protection policies. So sometimes it could be the people who were behind the initial policies framing, the policy frame or the problematization. So if the people have different ideological or value preferences, it may create a whole lot of problems. Sometimes it could be the timing. At a particular point in time, maybe if you look at development discourse and the challenges that we face in the 70s, 60s, it's not the same as the challenges that we faced in the 70s. It's not the same as the challenges 50s, 60s, 70s moving back. At every point in time, there's a shift in the discourse of development and what is of critical importance and where funding are directed to. So if you don't follow this pattern of change, or at the particular point that those laws were being drafted or created, the topical issue at that time may now be very different from now. So you tend to see that those laws are no longer relevant, but they are still sitting there. And we assume that because we have those laws, we don't need to pass new ones, but they are not serving our interests and they are irrelevant. So that level of critical analysis and review of existing policies within the child protection sector can expose some of these gaps and these weaknesses so that we can see maybe whether they can be amended with a new collective interest and the timeliness of the issues, or even maybe an amalgamated kind of bill can be passed that takes into consideration 2 or 3 bills and then see how those interests can be done. But a constant review and critique of existing policies and legislations is one of the surest way we can make that level of influence. So the policy cycle, where do we go back to? Sometimes it may be the next immediate policy point backwards, but sometimes so it depends on the policy outcomes. Some policies may be so bad that you just have to withdraw them. Some policies may be somehow good and somehow bad that you just have to amend certain sections or some aspects of those particular policy to be able to get the desired or intended results. Some policies can just be so good that you don't even have to do anything. Even sometimes once it's piloted, it goes straight to expansion of the pilot just because it's good. So it depends on the level of challenges or gaps that exist or that are identified that can take you just maybe a little step back to the next policy decision point, or it can take you far away to restart the whole policy processes again. Or sometimes even withdraw the entire policy and stop implementing it so that you can find an alternative policy decisions or policies that can address the challenges that you wish to address.
Thank you so much. And I hope that all of your questions have been answered. Wow. Wow. I think it will be good for us to continue tomorrow because people are tired. It's been a very long day. And based on the interest in this, we all have interest indeed. But we can continue tomorrow. We are here together over the next 3 days. So tomorrow when we come, we can continue with these conversations. But at this point, I would want us to draw the curtains on today's event. And I would invite us to give ourselves a round of applause for surviving way in the morning up until now. And remind you again that tomorrow we'll be meeting together at the same time, starting at 9:30 a.m. And we have various sessions that we'll go through, and we know that your contributions and your participation is very, very well needed. So please make it a point to join us and join on time tomorrow. Once again, thank you very much and have a good evening. See you tomorrow. And thank you very much, Prof.
And are you done? Oh, you are okay. So we are done. I'm coming now.
Okay. All right, and thank you. Thank you to all of our distinguished guests, honorable DCs, directors,